All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode 985, Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you to everyone out there, as always, for listening to the show, watching, however you consume Talking Buffalo. I do appreciate you guys very, very much. I also appreciate today's sponsors, Sunny Reds, 1531 Abbott Road, just minutes away from Highmark Stadium. Some of the best wings you're going to get anywhere in Western New York. And I'll tell you what, if you've been there, if you haven't been there, most of you will be listening or watching this on Wednesday. Wednesday is their wing night. 50-cent wings, man. That is an incredible deal. So go try them for yourself. Anyway, all right. So this is our typical midweek episode. We're going to talk potential Josh Allen new contract, some extensions, some free agents. We'll take a look around the AFC East. Football, my favorite. Honestly, my favorite episode of the week, man, because my guy Matt Warren from SB Nation is with me. And as much as I love talking about the Bills, I also like talking about the NFL. And this is like the one episode per week where we get to spend some time talking about those other teams as well. How you doing, buddy? What's going on?
Good. We had a successful Super Bowl weekend over at SB Nation, and
Awesome.
I'm always like, I always joke about this with like some of the folks I work with. Um, I'm not used to our season lasting this long still, and so like the off season was kind of like where we shined at Buffalo Rumblings for a long time, for whatever a decade during that playoff drought where we were focusing on free agent stuff and the NFL draft and everything like that, and so it's like still a little weird that we get an extra month to the season, but it's definitely what we've always wanted, so I'll take it.
It's funny you say that because that is actually true. Going back, to the drought era, um, by Thanksgiving, you'd be thinking about the mock. You'd be doing mock drafts, studying the top of the first 10 picks relentlessly. And by the time it got to be midway through the playoffs, you'd know the top 30, 35 players by heart in this draft right now. So you're kind of playing catch up between that free agency and things like that. But yeah, for sure. I'd much rather have a shorter little break between jumping right into this as opposed to having literally months to prepare. One quick thing too, and like I said, we're gonna talk about Josh Allen. It's gonna present potentially what a new contract may look like for Josh Allen. But since we spoke last week, Josh Allen did win MVP. That is something that both you and I think it's safe to say, heavily advocated for. We both strongly believed that he was the MVP. I thought we were being unbiased. I thought we were being objective about it. Just some quick thoughts from you on Josh winning MVP and that speech, which, I've probably replayed that a dozen times, man. It was really just a great speech. He's a good dude, man. So worthy in so many ways, but not about me. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, the speech, it was the favorite headline I wrote all week, and it was, Josh Allen speech is going to be replayed in Western New York for decades or something like that. It really was a nice speech. Yeah, I've been advocating for Josh Allen to be the MVP since like November. I wasn't like one of those people that was saying it in September and October necessarily, but like once they beat the Chiefs the way that they beat the Chiefs in the regular season, to be clear, in the regular season.
Yeah.
And then they beat the Lions, like just beating the two number one seeds in the NFL, I thought was going to be enough for the AP voters. Now, the thing about it is that Lamar Jackson had an MVP season too. And so it really did come down to the end. And splitting hairs or, splitting the baby or however you want to however you want to describe it, like giving Lamar Jackson the all-pro quarterback slot and then giving Josh Allen the MVP slot, like that kind of stuff hasn't happened in 40 years. And really, I don't think it's ever happened because in 1987, when John Elway won the MVP, even though Joe Montana was the first team quarterback, it was split. The MVP vote for the 49ers was split between Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. And so Elway kind of snuck in because those two guys split the vote. The Bills didn't really have that this year. So it really is the first time that, the second team quarterback was picked as the MVP. And I totally understand why they did it. I thought Dan Orlovsky laid out a really nice plan, even though he was ridiculed for it on ESPN. You know, Lamar Jackson had probably the better quarterback season. Josh Allen did more with less than any player in the NFL. And I think that's a really important thing to say, even though some of those ESPN personalities didn't when they were talking to Orlovsky. And I know we have already gone over that. We've said that plenty of times. So I really appreciated some of the nuance that some of the AP voters shared, even if I guess some of the online critiques weren't there.
Just look, sometimes in a season, there's more than one MVP worthy candidate.
Yep.
It's not always cut and dry. And this was certainly one of those seasons. And the vote was close too. Lamar would have been a worthy MVP. I just felt like Josh Allen deserved it. And I think that 4-game stretch is what really closed the deal for him, culminated in that Detroit game. That was the 4th game. But that 4-game stretch, I remember Mike Greenberg going on ESPN after that and saying it was the best 4-game stretch that he's ever seen of quarterback in his life. And I agree.
Mm-hmm.
He was literally flawless. Anyway, congratulations to Josh. And we're going to circle back to him here in just
Absolutely.
a few. Tell me real quick, before we get going with today's episode and the topics, what is this new Buffalo Bills trivia game that I'm hearing about that Buffalo Rumblings is dropping? What's up with that?
Sure. So at SB Nation, since I guess it was September, we've been running a daily NFL trivia game called In 5. And you get 5 clues to figure out which NFL player it is based on those different clues. And so they go from really hard general clues to much more specific clues. So starting today, Wednesday, February 12th, instead of it being a general NFL player, it's going to be a Buffalo Bills specific player. So we're going to go through the history of the Buffalo Bills.
Wow.
There's going to be obviously current players, but former players on there as well, all the way back to 1960. Right now, it's only players that have taken a regular season snap for the Bills. So there's your little clue that it's not going to be Anquan Bolden right off the bat. But we do have the ability to add in some players like that over the course of the future. But right now, it's just set for players who have taken a snap for the Bills. So that's going to be daily over at Buffalo Rumblings starting today, Wednesday, February 12th.
That's awesome. I'm going to have to tag my boy, Mike D. Shout out Imperial Pizza, by the way, manager over there. He's like probably the dude I know who's the best at Bills trivia. And I don't like to admit when someone's better than me at something, but he definitely is. So I got to make sure that I put him onto that.
The nice part about the game too is like you can share it out. So like at the end, after you get your score, you can share it with your friends. And like I've been playing with my brother on the NFL one, and I'll send him my score and try to beat him, obviously. And then like if we have a funny anecdote about that player, we'll share it. So it can be a really nice like kind of gateway into a nice little conversation about some of the Bills of old.
That's awesome, man. I'm looking forward to playing it myself. All right. So anyway, Josh Allen. A potential new contract. I think that's at least going to be on the table for this offseason. I'm not a contract guy. I've told you this. I tell everyone who listens to the show. I react to contracts. I don't really know how to put them together. I don't know much. Explain to us listening to the show, what a potential Josh Allen contract would look like, why the Bills may rip up his deal or rework his deal, whatever you want to call it, extend his deal and give him a new one, because obviously he's under contract, but with all these other deals coming out, he's quickly becoming underpaid, not to mention just one MVP. That'll give him a little bit of leverage. I don't know that he's seeking out one right now either, but kind of explain to people where you think it stands with Josh Allen contractually and what potentially a new contract may look like.
Sure. And if folks want to read this, I put this out a couple weeks ago over at BuffaloRumblings.com. It's still right on the homepage if they want to go check it out. But the biggest thing is that they moved money into the 2024 season to kind of give him a little bit more cash. And one of the ways they did that was moving his big roster bonus that was in 2025 into 2024. So this season, he's only scheduled to make $14 million. So that's not very much money for the best quarterback in the league, obviously. So as other quarterbacks are making like 60, 70, 80 million dollars in cash, I want to be clear about that, cash, not necessarily like average value or salary cap numbers. There's quarterbacks that are making 4 or 5 times, even 6 times what he's going to make in 2025. So I think when they did that move last offseason, they kind of did it under the radar. They didn't announce it publicly. They just kind of wanted to make him a little bit happier, just to give him some like actual cash in
Hmm.
that 2024 season. And so they created this huge hole in 2025 where they're only paying him $14.5 million. So I think all along that they were planning on revisiting his contract this offseason, when they did that, because they moved so much money from 2025 up to 2024.
What type of contract were he to sign a new one? Where if Brandon Beane gets him to agree to a new contract, what is potentially ballpark what a new contract would look like for him?
Well, right. I mean, if you look at Dak Prescott's deal that he signed right before the 2024 season, it was 4 years, 240 million. That's $60 million a year. When Allen signed his deal, it was what, 45 million a year or something like that. And again, I hesitate to even talking about average contract numbers because we've seen this with the Von Miller deal. They added, these fluffy years at the back to really bring up that average value
Yeah.
when they're not going to see it. And I tend to talk about like first year money, like first 3 year money, as like better barometers of that because they're more likely to see that money. So here's just one example that I've used for the last 5 years. When Dak Prescott signed his last deal, not the one he signed this past off season, but his last deal like 5 years ago, he made $60 million the day he signed the contract with the signing bonus. Patrick Mahomes in the first 3 years of his current deal didn't even make $60 million in 3 years. Dak Prescott made it in one day. So that's why
Wow.
like first year money and cash matters way more to me than average value. Because if you look at Mahomes' average value, it was number one at the time, but it was a 10-year deal. So he just didn't make very much money up front. It was like pushed to the back. And so the Chiefs have started moving cash up for Patrick Mahomes. The Bills have now started moving cash up for Josh Allen because they signed these really long multi-year deals, and the cash that their peers are making is a lot different than the cash Mahomes and Allen are making. So that ballpark is like that 4 year, $240 million contract for Dak Prescott. Whatever it was, Lamar Jackson I think made $80 million the day he signed his contract extension with the Ravens, and Allen has been left behind because of moves like that. And so Prescott's signing bonus on this contract was 80 million. Jordan Love's was 75 million. Jared Goff 73 million. So Allen's like very much underpaid in that regard, because he hasn't made that much over the last couple seasons, to even come close to those numbers.
So if Josh Allen were to sign a new contract next week, you probably would expect at a minimum of a $70 million to get it that day signing bonus.
Well, yeah, I would, especially because that allows them to extend out the salary cap hit. When you sign a signing bonus,
Sure.
it's prorated. It's prorated over 5 years, and so you take that number divided by five, and that year's cap number is just one of those fives, and then it's prorated out over the course of the rest of the deal. That'll be important later if we talk about contract restructures too. So I'm just trying to get that in, but so yeah, I would expect him to make at least 70 million up front, maybe like 80 million up front. But then like if you look at like the first 3 years of the deal, you would want him to average $60 million or more in those first 3 years, not just to make up for what happened over the last few, but because other contracts like Patrick Mahomes is probably going to sign a new deal at some point too, or at least get more money moved up front, for the same reason. And so you would want it to average out like 60 million or at least 55 million over the course of the next 3 years too. And his current contract does not do that.
Now, say if he does sign a new contract at some point this offseason, I believe I went over the cap, and his cap number for this season, upcoming season, is scheduled to be 44.7 million. Now, if he
Right.
gets a big signing bonus or whatever spread out with his cap number, if he were to sign a new deal, even though he's obviously going to get a lot more money, with his cap number for this season, for Bills fans who say, you know what, I'm all in this season. I want every available dollar that I could possibly
Mhm.
get. And we're going to talk about a couple of potential restructures here, just a few. But for somebody who wants every possible dollar for the cap this year, if he were to sign a new deal this year, even though it's for a grotesque amount of money, would his cap number actually go down, in that first year? How would that be affected
It
potentially?
depends on it depends on how much money they gave him up front as that signing bonus. What I wrote over at Buffalo Rumblings, if they're giving him that $70 or $80 million signing bonus, his cap hit wouldn't go down, but it wouldn't go up by very much either. So it would
Okay.
stay about the same. Right. And that's kind of what we want, right? If we're giving him 60 something million a year, having his cap number be 45 this year is going to increase flexibility in the years to come. Now, if folks are only caring about 2025 being the all-in year, you Allen's base salary in 2025 is 14 million. So if you lower that by like 12 million to get him down to the NFL's minimum salary, and then spread the rest of the cap hit out over the next 5 years, you would save like $8 or $10 million on the cap this year.
Mhm.
But your quarterback's only making $14.5 million, so he's not going to be happy, or at least he shouldn't be happy. Like, I don't want that either if I'm a Bills fan. And so I just think that his contract needs to be changed regardless of if Bills fans are all in or not, because I don't want Josh Allen making $14.5 million in 2025.
So just to be clear for everybody, let's just say the Bills don't give him a new contract this offseason. Let's say they do it after this next season
Mhm.
and they want to create some cap money right now. They can convert money into a signing bonus and kick that can down the road, and they would lower his cap for this coming season, correct?
You can do that, yes, but it's not like in the years past, like they were able to open up like 35 or $40 million by restructuring his contract, because their contract restructure, quote unquote, is taking base salary and converting it
Mhm.
to signing bonus.
Yeah.
The base salary money is really what we're looking at here, and it's $14 million. He doesn't have a roster bonus in 2025 that we could use to convert to a signing bonus and prorate it. So we're not talking about that much money with Josh Allen's contract right now. The reason his cap hit is so high is because we've been doing that for the last several years, and you can't alter that once it's already been prorated. So the majority of Josh Allen's cap hit in 2025 is going to stay the exact same no matter what we do, because it's already prorated money from the option bonus we paid him last year, the option bonus we paid him the year before that, the signing bonus we paid him the year before that.
So, long story short, this sounds like it should be a good offseason to give Josh Allen a new contract.
I mean, he's going to get something done. There's no way they're going to pay him 14.5 million this year. So
Right, right,
they're
right, right.
going to pay him more than that. So whether it's them moving up money from the future, whether it's ripping up the contract, giving him a new contract, they could theoretically just give him a 1 year extension with a huge signing bonus to prorate everything over the length of the deal. There's a lot of ways to go about doing it. What they did last year, like I said, was move money up from later years into the current year. Um, However you want to account for it, they're going to give him more cash in 2025 than what he's currently making.
All right. Let's take a quick break. Come back on the other side. I want to go over, among other things, some potential contract restructures that would definitely create some cap room for the Buffalo Bills. Be right back. All right, I'm back here with Matt Warren from SB Nation. I'm looking forward to hearing a couple of hate tweets and comments that I get for Kendrick Lamar halftime music show take. Anyway, we talked about Josh Allen here before the break, potentially getting a new contract, what that may look like, what they could do if they don't give him a new contract this off season. What are a couple Bills contract restructures you could see coming that would make sense to you?
Sure, yeah, the Bills can create like something like $40 million or maybe even more, just with some of these contract restructures or contract reworkings, and get the cap space that they need to go out and sign somebody or trade for somebody or whatever. So
Mhm.
the one we already talked about, I think it was last week, was Von Miller. I wouldn't use a contract restructure with him; it would be a pay cut. But if he wanted to stick around and the Bills were interested in a different big fish, I know that a lot of Bills fans want Myles Garrett or Max Crosby or whatever. But if they just wanted to keep Von Miller around, give him like a $9 million haircut on his base salary, and that would cut his cap number down by the same amount of money, because base salary counts like dollar for dollar on the cap in that
Sure.
current year. And so they could create almost $10 million in cap space just by giving him a pay cut or by releasing him. So like that's the one I would talk about. There's a couple others in here that would save some money. For say younger guys, I don't typically like doing this for older guys because it's going to accelerate their cap hit when they do retire or they do get released and fall off a cliff or whatever. So the guys I'm looking at right now, Ed Oliver, it would create $10 million in cap space if they restructured his contract and added a couple of dead years at the end. Dawson Knox, $6.5 million they could create by restructuring his deal,
Wow.
especially since a bunch of his money is like they've already pretty much assumed that they're going to keep him because they guaranteed most of his salary for 2025. So if you pay it up front, they can still cut him a year from now and not have like too many harsh ramifications. So I think he's definitely a candidate for that. Curtis Samuel's $4.8 million if they do that. And again, I think it's doable because he's going to be on the roster this year. They've already guaranteed a huge chunk of his salary.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a guy that I could see them doing it. Taron Johnson, $3.6 million they would save on the cap with him. Spencer Brown already has a big option bonus, and so would only save about $2 million to completely restructure his deal. $2 million on the cap, I should say. So again, he's a guy that you could see them creating a little bit of space for. Taylor Rapp, if they want to keep him around, $1.66 million in cap space they'd save. And then the last guy, and I've saved him for last on purpose, Tyler Bass. His salary guarantees on the 5th day of the league year. So if they're planning on keeping him, they might as well just do a contract restructure with him once his salary guarantees so that they can spread out his cap hit over the course of the next few years.
Yeah.
If they're going to cut him, they're going to cut him before the league year starts. So that's kind of the tipping point for Tyler Bass. But I saved him for last because it's a little bit more nuanced.
I think he's going to stay. I think he earned his way. I would be shocked. So if they can restructure, though, that would be great. Of all the guys you said, there's one that I've arrived at this. In fact, I've just arrived at this maybe in the last 24 hours even, and that's Von Miller. I think it's time for the Bills to put financial stuff aside and move on from Von Miller. You look at again, this is per over the cap. If they were to cut him now, they would have to eat $15.4 million of dead cap. They would still save, though, $8.4 million in cap space. That's a lot of money to still save. I mean, eating the dead cap sucks, but you'd still save 8.4. Or they can post June 1st designate, of course, and they would only eat $6.3 million in dead cap this year, and they would save over $17 million. The thing is, you kind of want to get that money before June 1st, especially if you want to be players to try to go get a big fish. So I would still lean towards taking your medicine with the dead cap now and still saving 8.4. That's partially financial. In fact, it's a lot financial, but it's also performance in snap percentage base. Look, he played 16 snaps against the Chiefs. He played 17 snaps against the Ravens. I'm at the point where Javon Sullivan could do that for me. Okay. Him being on the roster, like you said, let's say you get him to take a pay cut, like you suggested. Well, he's now on the roster, and you're not going to get someone else is not going to be on the roster at that position because you already have Von Miller. I think Von Miller's production is slipping. And I want to say he's terrible. For whatever reason, the fact that he didn't get more run in the playoffs bothers me. That tells me that they just don't think that much of him at this point. And between the 8.4 that you could save by cutting him, and again, just getting rid of that roster spot, let Javon Sullivan start the year as the 5th, maybe the 4th edge guy. That's where you go out and you try to get, whether it's Garrett or Crosby, or maybe go to free agency. Maybe Josh Sweat hits the free agent market. Khalil Mack, we've talked about him before. There's other guys. Chase Young, I don't know. I would rather take a flyer on somebody like that than Von Miller at this point. I feel like you know what you got in Von Miller. His skills are deteriorating. His snap count is deteriorating. And again, you didn't play him that much because I thought he was going to ramp up for the playoffs, and he played 17 and 16 snaps in the last 2 games. So at this point, I think it's a football decision as much as financially, but I'm ready to move on from Von Miller.
Sure. If he takes the $8.5 million pay cut that I suggested, he goes down to $9 million cash in 2025. So that's like AJ Epinesa money, just to put it in perspective. So yes, you're freeing up the roster spot. It would be a football decision. However, I also think that Von Miller at $9 million, of the same amount of money you're paying a guy like AJ Epinesa to give you rotational snaps at defensive end, like really high end rotational snaps, not necessarily like starter money, is like, I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility. So I just like throwing that out there because I think so many people are saying that what you're saying, Von Miller should be done. He's like, but I think he brings some value as long as you're not counting on him to be your alpha dog. And at $9 million for the year, I don't think you are. And you get that exact same cap savings that you would for cutting him. Obviously, it pushes the dead cap stuff into the future, and you'll still have to account for it. It's another $9 million or $8 million that you're paying Von Miller over the course of the life of his contract. But I don't think it's as open and shut as folks are saying right now.
All right. Well, let me ask you this then. Does Von Miller, even if it's only $8 or $9 million on this roster, which is a reasonable amount of money, like you said, same as AJ Epinesa, does Von Miller being on this roster prevent you from going and trying to trade for, say, Trey Hendrickson? We'll use him as an example. Or again, I'll go back to Khalil Mack, somebody like that, a 2-year deal, or maybe a Chase Young, although Chase Young's not going to get that kind of contract. So actually, let's get him out of there. Talk about the big names. Is keeping Von Miller on your roster, even at half the price of what he would otherwise make, is that going to prevent you from going and getting a Trey Hendrickson or a Khalil Mack? Because your third and your fourth defensive ends are making $8-9 million a piece. That seems like a lot of money to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because you're going to be paying Greg Rousseau, whatever it is, $14 million. You're going to pay the new person a whole bunch of money. You don't want to put that much money, especially because of what you're paying Daquan Jones, at least right now, and at Oliver. Like, that's a lot of money invested in your front four. So I do think if they did that with Von Miller, it's after they made their decision on kind of the other pieces of their defensive line. And at some point, they need to invest draft capital there again, um, because that's where you get the cheap labor. Maybe if they get rid of Daquan Jones, you can have that conversation, which, again, not out of the realm of possibility. But you can't be paying, to your point, Greg Rousseau, Khalil Mack, Von Miller, and AJ Epinesa all more than $9 million to play defensive end.
Here's what I know. The current Bills defensive line as it stands without a significant upgrade is not good enough. It doesn't get it done in the playoffs. You're not going to beat the Chiefs. You're going to get the same result 10 out of 10 times when you play the Chiefs in the playoffs with this front four. You got an upgrade. You got to upgrade. And I feel like at this point, Von Miller should be a football decision more than a financial one. And I'm glad you mentioned Daquan Jones because he's the other one as well. I feel the same exact way about Daquan Jones. Dude's 33 years old. He's been pedestrian since he came back from the torn pec. Yep. He was awesome before, and it sucks what happened to him in London, but he has not been the same player. He was relatively healthy this past season, and he was just a guy out there. He made a play here, made a play there. You're not winning with him. You got to get better at that position, and you got to get another edge guy. So football reasons more as much as financial, I'm ready to move on for Von Miller, Daquan Jones. Go give me two guys who could do it. Now, maybe one of them come with a high draft pick, but at least in one of those two spots, you got to go and you got to spend some money and you got to upgrade. The Bills got plenty of free agents. I think there's 11, at least worth discussing. Amari Cooper, Rasul Douglas, Matt Collins, Austin Johnson, Dwan Smoot, Gilliam, Quentin Jefferson, Ty Johnson, Jordan Phillips, Reed Ferguson, DeMar Hamlin, and Tommy Joe. But Tommy Joe's retired, so, I mean, he's not even in this mix here. Prioritizing free agents, in your opinion, who's worth re-signing and who are you prioritizing trying to bring back for the Buffalo Bills more than the others?
Sure, like prioritizing bringing back is different than like prioritizing levels of importance because obviously the Bills have a hole at cornerback, so you would think that Rasul Douglas would be like at the top of the list, but I don't necessarily think he's like so good that I'm going to leverage everything to make sure he's the first free agent I re-sign. But like, a guy like Matt Collins, Jordan Phillips, Reggie Gilliam, those kinds of guys, even a Ty Johnson, you can get back for pretty reasonable deals. I wouldn't necessarily want to let that linger. I want to know what their number is going to be, sooner rather than later. So those are the like Reed Ferguson. Those are the guys that I would want to resign like between now and the opening of free agency in March. As far as like any of those guys that I'd be really upset about losing, I don't know if there's anybody on that list that I would be like
Agreed.
super upset about losing. So,
Agreed.
I'm not of the opinion that they're going to re-sign Amari Cooper, although I'm not like ruling it out. I just don't think that I don't think that fit worked as well as folks thought it might. Even though personality wise it was good, we'll see. I mean, we obviously are in the building, so we don't know how he eventually clicked with
Right.
Josh Allen like towards the end of the season in the locker room. But I don't think there's anybody on that list that I would like, not even move heaven and earth. I don't know if there's anybody on that list I'd move a whole lot for, to be honest with you.
Sure. Look, there's a couple guys that I for sure would like to see back. Matt Collins for sure. I'd like Ty Johnson back for sure. He knows his role and he plays it real well. Reed Ferguson, why not? I mean, I know you can go get another long snapper, but you like that locker room. He's been here a long time, knows the city. I'm good with him being back. Reggie Gilliam knows his role. He's a good special teams player, pretty good blocker. Play a little fullback, little tight end if you need to him. He could. I'd like those guys back, but yeah, I'm not moving heaven on earth. I think there'd be a lot of fans pretty pissed off though if Matt Collins ain't back. And why would he not want to come back? He's got a great role on this team. The fans love him. He loves his organization. You got an opportunity to play with the MVP quarterback. You're kind of a cult hero here in this town, and I'm sure he's going to get a couple bucks. Plus, he's got a pretty decent role in this offense as well. So I don't know why he wouldn't want to be back. Ditto for Ty Johnson. The one guy that we talked about, I'm going to kind of liken this to Von Miller and DaQuan Jones, because I think there's three positions on this football team that the Bills need to say, we got to get better at. We talked about two of them, in my opinion, at least anyway, DaQuan Jones and Von Miller. I think the other one's Rasul Douglas. I think you move on from Rasul Douglas. He's getting up there in age. I like him, but he's had knee issues, and I don't think he's the same guy that they traded for about a year and a half ago. This, to me, is a position that you upgrade. You got to spend some money. It ain't going to be Kyrie Elam. Let's just put it that way. So you got to go out. You got to get a corner. There's some pretty good corners, too, in the market if you want to spend some money. And I'll say this, too, because I agree with you 100% about Amari Cooper. People are like, should we resign him? The answer is no. And I'm going to tell you why. Let's just say he's going to get a short-term deal, $12 to $15 million, whether it's the Bills, somewhere else, a 2 or 3 year deal. That would be his average. Well, you look at the Bills' offense right now. Khalil Shakir is solidified. Curtis Samuel is coming back. And I expect him with a healthy offseason to maybe have a little bit of a bigger role. I thought he came on towards the end of the season. So you got him. And then you got Keon Coleman, who you damn sure better be counting on to have a big step in year 2. So that's your top 3 right there. And if you bring back Mike Collins, you know what he could do already. He's a good 4th. Why are you bringing back Amari Cooper and giving a wide receiver $14, $15 million or whatever it's going to be? Doesn't make sense to me. It makes more sense to go spend $13 to $15 million and go get a good cornerback or a defensive tackle than it does to spend that money on Amari Cooper. So I'd be stunned not stunned, I shouldn't say that, but I would certainly be surprised if Amari Cooper's back. I think their priority needs to be defense, 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 and more defense.
I was agreeing with you up until that last thing.
I knew you were.
Really, I mean, I was with you for a long time, and I'm just, even after watching the Super Bowl, I'm just more of a fan of just outscoring the Chiefs and just like every time you get the football, scoring and trying to get a stop on defense. Even after, like I said, even after I watched the Eagles do it, because the Eagles have hit on so many of their draft picks, they've hit on so many free agents that I think it's going to be very hard to copy that Eagles blueprint. Because, I mean, we talked back in years ago now when the Giants won the Super Bowl because they got that pressure out of the front four and were able to disrupt Tom Brady. The way that the Eagles have 2 waves of what the Giants did to Tom Brady is just so mind-blowing, and it's certainly not sustainable over the course of, say, 3, 4, 5 years. But you can outscore the Chiefs for 5 years if you get the right pieces in place. So I'm leaning more to the opinion that I'm not just going to go defense, 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 because Sean McDermott has shown over the years that even if you keep building up the defense, the Chiefs are going to just like roll you in the postseason on defense. So you have to outscore them.
Well, they roll you because you have pedestrian players, playing in big moments at this point, or guys who were at their best 4 years ago. I think that's part of the problem. You
Right,
mentioned
but 4 years ago, it was the same thing. You had like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer at the height of their powers still getting rolled. Matt Milano, all pro, still getting rolled. Like the Chiefs and Bengals have been running through you, no matter who you have out there before their injuries, before they like declined at the end of their career. Like, I mean, Ty Dunn puts it out every time the Bills lose to the Chiefs. Like, how many punts have the Bills forced in the
oh, I
playoffs
know.
against the Chiefs in the last 4 years, or Bengals, I should say? Like, they don't get the turnovers that they live and die by during the regular season. They don't force punts in the postseason against those teams. You have to be able to outscore them, and you can do it with Josh Allen. You can do it with that offensive line. Just keep throwing wave after wave of points at them, and that's the only way I think that Sean McDermott's Buffalo Bills are going to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs.
Well, let me kind of rectify or modify, I should say, what I meant. You're right.
Okay.
Everything you said was right. However, I was talking about the front four, man. You got to be better on the front four. And the Bills defense, it's not for lack of trying. They've used money.
No
They've
kidding.
spent good money. They've used heavy draft resources. They just haven't hit. But you can't stop doing it because it hadn't worked. Just like when you draft a quarterback, you got to keep drafting it until you get it right every year if you have to. You mentioned the Eagles. You want to hear an impressive list? Holy shit, man. I want you to listen, everybody. The Eagles' first through third round picks since 2021. This is just absurd. Devontae Smith, stud. Landon Dickerson, stud. Milton Williams, developing into a stud. And by the way, good at free agency. I would love for the Bills to give him a long look. Jordan Davis, stud. Cam Jurgens, literally a stud. Nakobe Dean, okay. Jalen Carter, a stud. Nolan Smith, a stud. Then Tyler Steen, Sidney Brown. Yeah, Quinton Mitchell, a promising rookie corner this year. Cooper DeJean. I mean, you saw the Super Bowl. You watched the game. Jalix Hunt. That's their first through third round picks since 2021. That is ridiculous. That is quite literally why the Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions right now, because of how Howie Roseman just crushed the draft since 2021, which to me is a big point. You got to make some moves on, with the Bills in the offseason, and they will. We'll see how it plays out. But I think as much as anything, man, I'm sure you would agree with this. More Brandon Beane's higher picks have to hit in 2025. They have to. Keon Coleman, Cole Bishop. People are talking about safety. Well, you draft a guy in the second round, you have to envision him being a starter, right? So you got Taylor Rapp and Bishop. Bishop's got to hit. Dwayne Carter, the reason why you traded down from 28 was to get that third round pick that you used on Dwayne Carter. He showed some flashes, then got hurt. He's got to hit. Obviously, Dalton Kincaid, too. He's got to hit in year 3. You agree with that? Like, that to me is as important as any move the Bills make in the offseason, short of getting a Myles Garrett. That is as important as anything else. Keon, Bishop, Carter, Kincaid. These guys got to start hitting. I just ran off to you the Philly drafts. That's going to be hard to equal, but the Bills got to hit on more of their players in these early rounds. That's basically what it comes down to, right?
Right, and Roseman has given himself more bites at the apple with really, really lopsided productive trades for draft picks, and so he's had extra draft picks to use. I think Jalen Carter was a pick that they acquired for somebody. Sorry, I didn't look that up before we started, but they've had extra bites at the apple. Now the Bills have, they obviously had the extra third round pick this year, or the extra second round pick this year. They traded the third rounder for Amari Cooper, so that's kind of a wash. But they have 2 second round picks this year and a first round pick. Getting 3 impact players would obviously be great. They've shown that they can draft at least good players in the first and second rounds, but that should be your ceiling, right? Sorry, that should be your floor. That should be the bare minimum of what you get when you draft a guy in the first or second round. And so they just need to keep drafting more guys that are more like, Josh Allen than, I know that's a high bar, sorry. Than a third rounder that's going to, fizzle out, I don't know. Why can't I think of
you need more James
Ford.
Cook. You need more James Cook and less Kyrie Elam in the first handful of rounds. That's basically what it comes down to. James Cook's a star running back for this team. You need more guys like him. Yeah. You need not Zay Jones. You need more of that. Yeah, you need more James Cook than Zay Jones at round 2, basically, is what I'm getting at. Quickly, too, you always got to think about the future. Brandon Beane does think about the future. I'll give him that for sure.
Absolutely.
That 2026 potential Bills free agent class. This year we're talking about, well, I'd like to get Mac back. I'd like to get Ty back, but I'm not going to pound the soil. I'm not going to pound the ground for any of these guys. I'm fine if they all leave. Well, 2026, as things stand right now, Connor McGovern, David Edwards, AJ Epinesa, Groot, Cook, Bernard, Shakir, Benford. Those guys are all scheduled to be, as things stand right now, free agents in 2 years, man. And that's going to get expensive. It's going to get expensive. This feels like a good year to really throw those chips in. It does to me.
And we talked about it last offseason when they got rid of so many players, whether it was through free agency or releases. Like Brandon Beane certainly does plan ahead. And so when he released those guys last year, or traded Stephon Diggs in that case, it was to set up not just this offseason 2025, but to also set up the guys that he was going to have to extend going forward. He was hoping he was going to have to extend Greg Rousseau. He was hoping he was going to have to extend Christian Benford. Like James Cook, we can talk about differently, but like he knew he was going to have to get some sort of skill position players between, James Cook, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, like some combination of those guys moving on, even replacing a guy like Dawson Knox if they do move on from him a year from now. And then on defense, you've got those cheap depth players like Damar Hamlin, who's a free agent this year, Cam Lewis and Jamarcus Ingram, who are free agents next year. Like there's just a lot of forward planning that is one of the reasons why I think Brandon Beane is one of the best in the business as far as like putting together an entire team. He hasn't necessarily hit on those first and second round picks like a guy like Howie Roseman or some others around the league. But I mean, he hit on the one that counted the most, which is Josh Allen. And like he's been okay at the rest of it. But I think his long-term like team planning, I think is, I mean, maybe not second to none, but it's certainly in the top 5.
Want to bet me, side note, want to bet me a pint of whatever kind of Buffalo Rumblings IPA they got going on at Resurgence next time you and I see each other, that Damar Hamlin is not a Buffalo Bill in 2025. Want to bet me?
I mean, I would take the bet just because I like beer, but like, I don't think he's going to get a huge contract anywhere.
He's not.
So like,
no, he's not.
I think there's like a couple teams that it makes sense where he ends up, but like, I mean, look, I look at the Cam Lewis deal from a couple of years ago. They paid him barely above the NFL minimum salary. He's an important piece here. He knows he's going to get playing time here, so he stuck around. But then you look like a guy at Dane Jackson, and Dane Jackson got a really nice contract last offseason, and he left. I don't think Hamlin's going to get that nice contract. So I think his best case to play is in Buffalo, and I would stay in Buffalo if I was him. But I mean, maybe it only takes one team to give him $4 or $5 million, and then he'll be gone.
Damar Hamlin, you are a Pittsburgh Steeler, right there.
Well, yeah.
Right.
I mean, he's obviously said he wants to play there. He's from there. It's probably a 2-team list at this point, just because, like we keep saying, he's just so limited that like he's a replacement level safety. He's a replacement level safety.
He is limited. That's a great description to describe Damar Hamlin. He is limited. He does some things well. Look, if he's going to be back as a depth player, I'm not going to be mad about it. Great human being, and you can do a lot worse than your third or fourth safety on your team being Damar Hamlin. No question about it.
Taylor Rapp is like the perfect example of this. He started a bunch of games before the Bills signed him, and then the Bills signed him to that really low deal to just be a replacement level safety because they knew Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer were getting up there in age and were going to have to play some. Bringing back Damar Hamlin on that, like the previous Taylor Rapp deal where he's making just a little bit above league minimum, like makes a lot of sense. And he fits, like he knows the system here. He fits in. We know what we're getting from him. He knows what we're giving to him. I just think it makes a lot of sense that he's going to be back.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. By the way, another discussion for another time. The Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop dynamic. I'm interested in seeing who plays what. Who's going to be more in the box? Who's going to be more the center fielder? You want to say Taylor Rapp is definitely going to be the box guy, but if you remember 2 years ago with the Bills, when they went to that dime package, it would be Poyer who came in a linebacker, and it would be Rapp who stayed back at safety. We'll see how that plays out, but that's another discussion for another time. Real quick. Deebo Samuel. So there's been, any defensive end that becomes available potentially in a trade talk. Bills fans, rightfully so, me included, are going to say, Yeah, go get that guy. Deebo Samuel's a big name. Do you have any interest in him? Because I don't, but maybe you do.
No, I don't. I think the role that they envision for Curtis Samuel is the role that Deebo Samuel plays. And so I think they already have a guy that's going to be on the roster that's going to fill that role. Maybe not as well as Deebo Samuel might, but like, and I don't necessarily think the Bills need any more underneath guys. They need more of the longer speed type of folks,
Sure.
um,
100%.
or, or or guys that can create separation in the defensive backfield. And Samuel's a guy that's supposed to take like those short passes and make them long ones. Like he's a yak guy, can line up in the backfield, all that stuff. I just don't think it fits with the way that the current roster is constructed.
Fair enough. New York Jets. It certainly looks like Aaron Rodgers will not be back. By the way, quick, we're recording this lunchtime on Tuesday. The Saints are hiring Kellen Moore as expected to be their new head coach. All right, so the Jets, Aaron Rodgers not going to be back. What's their quarterback options looking like here? Because I don't think they're going to draft high enough to get one of the top 2 rookies in the draft. And I mean, there's a lot of retread names out there right now. Sam Darnold's certainly a name, and he had a good year in Minnesota. That's possible. Besides that, like Kirk Cousins or Russ Wilson, if he gets cut by the Steelers, maybe Fields, he's a free agent from the Steelers. Drew Lock. Who the hell is going to be the quarterback for the New York Jets in 2025? And if you're Garrett Wilson, are you kind of thinking maybe I don't want to sign a goddamn extension and stay with this team long term? He could be low key, depending on what direction the Jets going. He could be a guy that starts to make a little bit of trade noise about. But anyway, Jets quarterback options, assuming it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. What are you thinking?
Well, there's 2 names I'm circling because, to your point, the Jets are picking 7th, and both of the first round quarterbacks are probably going to be gone in the top 3 or 4 picks. So they're going to have to pull off a huge trade to get up there, and I don't know if either of those guys are worth huge trade ups. So
right,
that's I do think that they're going to go the free agent route. It's interesting because Aaron Glenn, obviously the Lions, had Matthew Stafford, made the trade for Jared Goff, so they've gone that kind of veteran quarterback route when he was there. There's 2 names that I'm actually looking at. One is Russell Wilson. New Jets general manager Darren Mogi, sorry if I'm saying that name wrong, was with the Broncos for forever, including when they traded for Russell Wilson. So I can see that connection there. They obviously valued Russell Wilson so much in the Denver Broncos that they traded just a bajillion things and gave him a gajillion dollars at the same time. And then Aaron Glenn spent 1 year with Jameis Winston in New Orleans. That could be a really fun, interesting pairing, bringing Jameis Winston in to kind of keep the seat warm in New York as they, whether it's waiting till next year to draft a guy or find some other sort of franchise quarterback. But so those are the 2 quarterbacks I'm looking at for them is Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston.
To me, that just screams your goal is to be competitive.
Right.
Like your ceiling is to be competitive if you're going into the season with Russ Wilson or even worse with Jameis Winston.
Yeah, think about how the Jets have been over the last several years. They have not been competitive. And so when Sean McDermott came to Buffalo, they had Tyrod, sorry. And, they were competitive that first year. They made the playoffs unexpectedly. Like, it gave him a lot of rope as he was trying to turn around this franchise. And if I'm Aaron Glenn or if I'm, Darren Mogi and I want to turn around that New York Jets franchise, I want a guy that's going to come in, and I don't necessarily need top end play. It's almost the same conversation we had about Aaron Rodgers. I don't need you to be MVP Aaron Rodgers or MVP Russell Wilson.
Right.
I just need you to come in and like lay the foundation for what we're really going to build the next year when we draft Josh Allen and trade Tyrod Taylor, right? Like, so if I get 1 year or 2 years of Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston to just kind of come establish the baseline as we try to turn around this bottom feeding New York Jets team, I think that's kind of where they're going to go, or at least that's the smart way for them to go. The Jets have not proven to be smart over the years, so who knows what they're going
to do. I look at their salary cap wise, they got around like 21 million or so, and they got some candidates they got to think about long and hard about trying to get big deals too, including Hall and Garrett Wilson, like we talked about, a couple others. But they got some unrestricted free agents coming up here in this class. They're going to be interesting. Both offensive tackles, although they're old and washed, they're going to be looking to move on from them anyway. But Tyler Conklin, Javon Kinlaw, DJ Reed, That's a corner I wouldn't mind taking a nice look at. And then Hassan Reddick. Now, this is the guy, Matt Warren here, who really he intrigues me. He didn't get a new deal. He mailed it in. He didn't want to be a Jet. Okay. He didn't get paid. He didn't play most of the season. He gave no effort when he was out there. That's obviously a red flag. But he's 31 years old. So, I mean, it's old. And he was trash last year, okay? But you go back to just 2023 with Philly. He played 74% of the snaps. He had 11 sacks. Year before that, 16. Year before that, 11. Year before that, 12 and a half. This guy, 4 straight years, double-digit sacks. Like, did he fall off a cliff? Or was he just really unhappy and didn't get his contract? Now he's going to be a free agent? Is this somebody that you say, hey, you know what, man, I'll give you a 2 or 3 year, I'll give you the Von Miller money that we're not going to give Von Miller anymore, maybe even a little bit more. This guy probably has a little more juice. Is this somebody who maybe low key could end up being a guy that the Bills have some interest in? Or are you just so turned off by the way things played out with the Jets last year, not to mention him being 31, that you're like, nah, no way?
I mean, I'm not turned off by it. I'm not turned off by it. I don't think Sean McDermott and the Bills will be turned off by it. Like, they brought in Stephon Diggs because they needed, someone with that skill set to get them over the hump. And, it obviously they had problems with that, but it worked on the field for a very long time. And, so like you said, he's 31. I'm not counting on him to, sign a 6-year deal. I know that the Bills have given out 6-year deals to aging defensive ends recently, but I'm not expecting him to come in and being like the guy for, the next 4 or 5 years, the way I would if they got Myles Garrett or Max Crosby. And so if you're bringing him in, or if you're bringing Khalil Mack in to be a piece, of your defensive line play, I think that's fine. And I don't necessarily think Reddick is, red flag Reddick or anything like that.
Red flag Reddick. Well, red flag Reddick had, again, 50 and a half sacks over his last 4 years prior to going to the Jets last year. Could be interesting. That could be a guy people aren't talking about that Brandon Beane and company take a look at. Aaron Rodgers. All right, so he's not going to be a Jet. Apparently, he's not going to retire. I feel like he should, but I don't think he's going to. Where does he wind up? I mean, doesn't see maybe a lot of teams, a lot of options that we could go to where, like, if his goal is to get back to the Super Bowl, it certainly doesn't seem like there's, a lot of options if he wants to be a starter anyway. What are you looking at when it comes to Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I mean, there's really only like 4, maybe 5 teams, like, because I don't have the Steelers on my list, but the Steelers are the betting favorite to get him. I don't see that fit necessarily with him and Mike Tomlin, but whatever, I guess. I'm looking at, like, the Browns, Titans, Raiders, and Giants, and I think of all of those teams, the Raiders kind of make the most sense because they have Tom Brady in the ownership group, because it's an indoor stadium. They're looking for more of a transitional piece. The Titans are another one that I find interesting because, like we said before, Brian Callahan wants to establish a baseline. He wants to save his job with a new general manager. Like, I think the Titans are going to take a bigger swing than Aaron Rodgers. So that's why I keep coming back to the Raiders being an option. I don't think the Giants are going to want him. They might. I don't know. Brian Dable could think that he could squeeze one more year out of him. I don't know. But I still think that the Raiders are the most likely option for him if he does want to keep playing.
I agree with you almost. I think Tennessee would be my pick right now. If it's not Pittsburgh, it could be Pittsburgh because you could sell the Steelers with Aaron Rodgers being a contender. At least, you could at least attempt to sell that. Tennessee is in a position with the first pick. Maybe they don't want a quarterback with that first pick. They want Abdul Carter maybe with that first pick, the great pass rusher. And then you go get Aaron Rodgers as that bridge. The Raiders makes sense for sure. I think Sam Darnold can be in the mix potentially for the Raiders as well. We'll see. I really don't give a shit. I don't think he's that good anymore. So whatever. He'll be somewhere. It don't look like it's going to be the Jets. Quickly, or the Dolphins. They're in awful cap shape. I mean, bad cap shape. They're like 11.5 over. They'll make some moves, but they got a couple free agents too that they're, going to have to pay or lose. Javon Holland, Liam Eckenberg, Calais Campbell, old. Hey, come to Buffalo for a year. I wouldn't mind that. Robert Jones, our offensive lineman. Not a lot of prominent guys, but, some handful of guys. I think with Miami, dude, it comes down to You need Tua to be healthy, obviously. And a lot of these guys just need to play better. That's what it comes down to. And McDaniels needs to coach better too, as well. I don't think you're going to see an incredibly active offseason from the Dolphins, in part because of how much money they tied into Tua, Tyreek, and the other receiver, Jalen Waddle. But maybe they bring back one Javon, maybe. I don't think it's going to be a really active offseason for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Like, I wouldn't have given Tua the contract they gave him, but at the same time, like if you look at their salary cap situation right now, they could, make a pretty big dent in it by restructuring Tua's deal,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to be guaranteeing his salary at some point in the early off season anyway. And so I think they're probably just going to restructure that contract. Um, and that gives them like $20 million of cap space, which gives them $4 million of available cap space. So like that's like the start of their conversation. But again, they're tying themselves to Tua for even longer, which I mean I think is a mistake. But I've always thought it was a mistake, and they
Yeah,
didn't. So I agree with you on the Mike McDaniel piece. I think he's proving to be, if not the problem in Miami, to being one of the biggest problems in Miami. Like there's some people that are
100%.
really good at coordinator jobs and not so great being the head guy. And I think he's proving, I mean, every day maybe that he's that guy. Like, I just, they don't play with any grit. They don't play with, I mean, I'm not going to question their heart or anything like that, but I just don't think that they are built to overcome adversity, whether it's in the playoffs or in the regular season.
100% agree with you. Last team here. Well, put it this way, by the way, unlike last season where the Bills were finished to pick, they were picked to finish second, maybe third in a lot of preseason predictions. I think the Bills are going to be, in fact, I just saw the Bills are actually the second biggest favorite to win the Super Bowl next year. Now, look, we're 48 hours removed from the Super Bowl this year, so let's not get stupid. And we know that the Bills overachieved this year. There might be a team in the AFC East who does that next year. You never know. But the Bills, I think, are going to be prohibitive favorites yet again in the AFC East without, they weren't that last year, but they were the years before that. I think you're going to get back to it. But anyway, if I was listening, if I was a football fan, a new football fan, I'm a newbie fan, and I said, I want to find a team and I want to get behind, I want to get on the floor, ground level with them, but it can't be a team who's good right now. I
Mm.
might pick the New England Patriots because, dude, they got $120 million in cap space. They got the franchise quarterback who's going to be good. They got zero priority free agents that they got to retain, that they got to pay big money for. And they got the fourth pick in the draft. This is
Mhm.
a team that is in really good shape. They got Vrabel, so they got a new coach, a guy who's won before. This is going to be a team. Every year we see a team that sucks, and then the next season they're good. That could be the Patriots this season. They're going to get a couple impactful players in free agency or trades. And again, having that fourth pick. Now, I still think they dropped the ball one way big time. Beating the Bills in the last game of the regular season, going from having the first pick to the fourth, that might cost them Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter because you got to pray that Tennessee, Cleveland, and Giants, two of those three teams take a quarterback. So one of those guys can fall to you at four. Those are franchise type potential players. And you might have screwed yourself out of getting one of them. But that notwithstanding, Matt, the Patriots are in really good shape. And I wouldn't be surprised if that roster looks significantly better come September.
it it shows the benefit of bottoming out and how I know the Patriots fans and Patriots didn't want to bottom out after Tom Brady left. They tried to keep it going with Mac Jones, who if Mac Jones had been great, like they'd still be in the mix, but obviously he wasn't. But you see what the Saints have done over the last several years, or even like what the Browns have done over the last couple of years, just trying to chase something that was never really there, and like mortgaging the future more and more and more
Mhm.
in order to get there, as opposed to just taking your medicine. And Brandon Beane did something like that last year, where he took his medicine on several players that were probably not part of the 2 or 3 year plan. Whereas the Saints keep locking themselves into these guys that are just kind of, I mean, they're from mediocre to really good, but there's no one like that's super great,
Sure.
and they just get stuck like chasing their tail for a decade after Drew Brees leaves. And the Patriots, to their credit, again, I don't think they wanted to do this, but to their credit, they have bottomed out over the last couple of years after Mac Jones absolutely failed, and they're set up just so well. They signed like remember that offseason where they signed both of the top tight ends on the market and they were just trying to reload and doing all that stuff. And then it didn't work out. And they smartly pivoted away from that strategy. I think they're going to be set up really well for the next decade with Drake May.
If Drake May plays the way I think he's capable of playing in year 2, this could be a team that is right in the mix for a playoff spot. Yeah. At the end of the season. Wouldn't surprise me. You want to go get him some weapons. You got that opportunity. You could go get him potentially a T. Higgins if he hits the market. You could certainly afford to go get a game-changing receiver like that. If you lose out on those two guys, I don't even know right now, but like you can go get the top left tackle in the draft at pick 4 as well. So things are certainly looking up for New England.
They need offensive line help for sure. That was their biggest question. Actually, that was why Drake May didn't start the season there, because they just wanted Jacoby Brissett to, get pulverized. But so they need to do the offensive line thing so that Drake May's not seeing ghosts out there. But yeah, they are definitely set up for a nice run here. And they've got smart people in their talent evaluation group now at general manager, at head coach. Like they've got the right pieces in place. Who knows if it's going to work out, but they've done it the right way, I think, this offseason, even if they had to throw Gerard Mayo under the bus to get there.
You typically, when I have you on every week, I usually, sometime on Monday, I start thinking, I'm like, all right, because we tape on Tuesday lunchtime. I'm like, what should Matt and I talk about this week? And it usually takes me until late Monday. I already know a full week ahead of time. Next week, I want to focus on some cornerbacks and some wide receivers that would make sense for the Bills. I think those are two positions that they're going to address, just maybe not to the extent that some people think they will. But anyway, this was a fun conversation. Maybe I should have talked for 15 minutes about the Super Bowl commercials and Drake and Kendrick Lamar at the half to make this go long. But I always appreciate Matt's time. Make sure you follow him on Twitter and Blue Sky at Matt Rich Warren. Check out SB Nation. Check out Buffalo Rumblings. That new Bills trivia game kicks off. If you're listening to this Wednesday, it kicks off on Wednesday. Can't wait to play it myself. Thanks, buddy. Always like having you on, man.
It was a great time. Thanks.
All right, I'll be back with a new show tomorrow. Don't ask me who's going to be on, because honestly, I really don't even know at this point. But I will be back with a new one tomorrow.